We'll start with Pete, and then if you want, we'll take some questions at the end. Please, Pete.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. As you said, it has been a historic year at the Department of War. Recruiting and retention over this year are at the most historic levels our country has ever seen. I had a chance to be on an aircraft carrier destroyer over Thanksgiving. The spirit in our ranks since the election under President Trump is unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it as a soldier myself in uniform, and I know a lot of you feel the same way. We've ripped out the DEI and the political correctness. It's all merit-based at the department. We're getting back to basics: accountability, training, readiness, lethality, and that's reviving that spirit. And Mr. President, we're rebuilding the military, historic investments. I just took briefings on the Golden Dome and F-47, next generation capabilities that are going to make sure that for generations to come, America has the most powerful, most capable, most lethal military in the world, which you have rebuilt once and we're rebuilding again. And then we're reestablishing deterrence and credibility. If you look at what happened, we deal with every day the outcome of what happened in Afghanistan, the debacle under Joe Biden. We just dealt with it in the streets of Washington, D.C. with those 2 National Guardsmen. And then what happened on October 7th with Hamas, what happened in Ukraine, a war that never would have started under President Trump. We're having to rebuild that. So whether it's freedom of navigation and taking the fight to the Houthis, whether it's Midnight Hammer, those beautiful B-2s going 37 hours back and forth, undetected, delivering with precision, and Iran not getting nuclear capabilities, Europe and NATO stepping up to 5%, locking down our southwest border. It's been an honor to work with Christy and Tom and everyone else down there to lock it to 0, operational control of our border. And then it's getting after and going after narco-terrorists and designated terrorist organizations in our own hemisphere. As I've said, and I'll say again, we've only just begun striking narco boats and putting narco-terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people. And Joe Biden tried to approach it with kid gloves. And allowed them to come across the border, cartels take over community, 20 million people, hundreds of thousands of Americans poisoned. And President Trump said, no, we're taking the gloves off. We're taking the fight to these designated terror organizations, and it's exactly what we're doing. So we're stopping the drugs, we're striking the boats, we're defeating narco-terrorists, and we're standing...
And Pete, you may say one thing, that drugs coming in through the sea by sea are down 91%. And I don't know who the 9% is.
I'm not sure either, sir.
But down 91% by sea.
We've had a bit of a pause because it's hard to find boats to strike right now, which is the entire point, right? Deterrence has to matter, not arrest and hand over and then do it again, the rinse and repeat approach of previous administrations. This is meant to get after that approach. And I will just end by saying, as President Trump always has our back, we always have the back of our commanders who are making decisions in difficult situations, and we do in this case and all these strikes. They're making judgment calls and ensuring that they defend the American people. They've done the right things. We'll keep doing that, and we have their backs, Mr. President.
Good job. Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's talk about that live with CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata. Charlie, good to have you with us today. It seems to me that the Secretary of Defense is pointing a finger at who gave those commands for that September 2nd boat strike while also voicing support.
Yeah, well, I was watching that too because he was kind of painting in broad strokes, Reed. We wanted him to talk about that sort of double tap, as the U.S. military calls it. But what he's referring to is Admiral Mitch Bradley, who's the commander of Special Operations Command there. So he has deflected a sort of direct involvement in ordering that second strike. But he also praised him on X, saying, look, I want to make one thing crystal clear. Admiral Bradley is an American hero, a true professional, has 100% of my support. I stand by him in the combat decisions he has made. So what that points to is in the overarching command structure, of course, the defense secretary has command over anything that's happening with the military, and by a larger extent, the White House is the commander in chief. So there would be a directive to strike those boats. That's where the agreement is made, or the acceptance and part of the operation that is going on down there. But, and this isn't new, the combatant command and the commanders on the ground ultimately make those decisions. So he certainly is distancing himself from that specific strike that you're referring to on September 2nd, which is the first one. It was a major strike, by the way, 11 people on board. one of the bigger boats that we've seen in the series of strikes that have killed 83 people so far. But the idea of coming around to strike that boat again is largely being pushed onto the plate of Admiral Bradley.
Yeah, and for our viewers at home, as you look at the video coming out of the White House there, the president is now going around that table and having his various heads, various departments give an update to the American people. So as soon as reporters are able to ask questions, we do understand, Charlie, that they will be asking more about that Venezuelan boat strike. But also we understand that there could be some questions about Venezuela. They've approved a U.S. request for those repatriation flights to resume. For our viewers at home who do not know what repatriation flights are or the resumption of those flights, maybe give us a quick 101 on that, and then talk to us about the larger context about why this is happening.
Yeah, so the repatriation flights were for Venezuelans who have essentially been kicked out of the United States. And in a way, it's Venezuela that has to approve the resumption of those flights. So that had been happening before all this tension was ratcheting up in the Caribbean and off the coast of Venezuela, including, F-18s and B-52s kind of skirting along the coast there. And the fact that President Trump said that the Venezuelan airspace was closed, which is not necessarily, has he got the authority to do that anyway. But the resumption of these flights, when we look at the overall picture, it seems to have taken the temperature down a little bit. It's lowered tensions there because in addition to those flights, which obviously it's addressing that flights will be coming into Venezuela, including these repatriation flights. In addition to that, as we reported yesterday, the USS Gerald R. Ford is currently in R&R, in port at St. Thomas. So when you put all of that together, this is the largest and most advanced aircraft carrier in the world. On board, it's got all those F-18s, the resumption of those flights into Venezuela. Yes, there are multiple U.S. assets, including around 200 Tomahawk missiles, maybe a dozen destroyers. There are F-35s, there are Reaper drones. There's a whole lot of military hardware in that region that gives the president and Secretary Hegseth plenty of options to launch strikes in Venezuela. The resumption of these flights and the fact that the carrier itself is at port for R&R kind of suggests that the tensions have been lowered, at least temporarily.
All right, Charlie D'Agata, thank you so much. Once again, as soon as we see reporters start to ask questions, we'll turn that around for you here on CBS News 24/7.